All right, everybody, we covered a lot of ground in the last 2 hours. We are going to cut break a little bit short. So back here at 10:45, I will be welcoming for the first time to the Oregon Business Plan stage Dr. Jayathi Murthy from Oregon State University, who will be joining me on stage. So have a quick break. We'll see you back here in 15 minutes.
Please welcome to the stage Jayathi Murthy, President and CEO of Dutch Bros Coffee.
All right, that was a quick break. Apologize to all the lobbyists. That's a short break. Welcome back, everybody. So I'm very, very pleased to bring up our next guest on stage. We're joined by Dr. Jayathi Murthy, the new president of Oregon State University. And to read her list of accolades would take me most of the interview time. So Dr. Murthy combines a distinguished record as microelectronics research scientist, industry engineer, and an academic leader. And beyond that, she's pretty amazing. Please welcome Dr. Murthy. Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. It's lovely to see you in full 3D and not just in Zoom.
Not in Zoom, right? Yeah, it's been a Zoom life for a while. So welcome to Oregon. How has it's been about 90 days or so?
Yeah.
Or a quick 90 days.
Yeah.
And what's your perspective so far? What are your overall general perspective on how you view the state and kind of what's happening around us?
I think it's in a really exciting place. I mean, I've been to Oregon many times, and I work in microelectronics schooling, so I've certainly been to Intel, many contacts with HP and so on. But truly excited by everything that the state holds. I mean, there's, of course, all the work on semiconductors and so on, but the agricultural sector, I mean, just the sheer diversity of the state, forestry, coastlines, I mean, just amazed by the opportunities that are possible here.
And how would you, as you have some perspective and probably gaining some perspective as far as where we're at, like how would you, in your leadership role within the state, because and we've talked about this, I think the leader of our universities are some of the most important leaders in our state with their ability to advance. How would you advise elected leaders, the business community, and our various universities and colleges as we advance economic innovation through post-secondary education?
Great question, right? The thing that strikes me as we go forward is that education policy is in fact economic policy. It's really the same thing. If you look at the impact that educational institutions have in the state, it's actually pretty substantial, right? If you look at Oregon State itself, I guess the impact is something like $3 billion a year. There are literally tens of thousands of OSU graduates all across the state in the workforce. There's a great deal of research being done at OSU. I mean, this year we clocked, $471 million in research. All of this is research impact, right? So universities, not just my own university, but this entire spectrum of universities that we have, community colleges, regional universities, R2 University, R2, R1s, have similar stories to tell in terms of socioeconomic impact all across the state. So as we craft our economic policy, we've got to understand that educational policy is a big part of it, and higher ed is a huge part of that, building that economic picture all across Oregon.
That's great. And as we heard this morning about, just touched on so many points and really some of the things that I would say were in the sweet spots of Oregon State as a land-grant institution and one of the major engineering universities maybe in the world. As you think about bringing together agriculture and ranching, and you think about the connected strategies to advance some of the work that was discussed this morning on semiconductor and manufacturing, like how do you see all of those things connected in a way from your vantage point?
Gosh, I mean, it's all connected, right? So we're building a workforce. I mean, so universities are builders, right? Universities are manufacturers. We manufacture talent. We manufacture a trained workforce, right? Now, I know we think about manufacturing and, you think semiconductors are so different from, I don't know, food. You think, semiconductor chips are different from potato chips. Yeah, they are. I mean, one tastes better than the other, I suppose. But from my vantage point, there's a great deal that actually ties all of these different industries together. I mean, think about evolving technologies, right? If you think about AI, if you think about machine learning, if you think about sensing, if you think about data, if you think about process control, process design, all of these technologies underlie virtually any manufacturing process that you're thinking about. So when our universities train students to develop all of these kinds of technologies, you're going to have an impact all across the board. So the investments that we make in semiconductors don't just stop there. When we train students to do these things, they're going to cut across the entire spectrum of manufacturing. It's not even really just manufacturing, right? So when we train students, they're going to impact the health sector, where data is a big, big deal, and AI and machine learning is really entering, the health sciences industry. We've talked about sustainability and climate change and resilience here. Data is going to underlie all of that. I was talking to some of our folks in our ag school just the other day. Do you know what amazing things are happening in the forestry industry? They've got projects in which they are mapping the coordinates of every single tree, tens of millions of trees that are being mapped. They've got huge amounts of data coming in at a level of detail and a level of specificity that we've never had before. And so things like computer science, things like AI, things like machine learning, data science are going to undergird how we manage forests in the future. So all of these new technologies that we're bringing to the classroom are going to transform not only semiconductors, not only food and bev, but really are going to impact industry all across the board.
Yeah, well said. And it's everything that is touched by our universities. There's nothing that happens in this state that doesn't have an impact from our universities. And as you are, now I'm an Oregon State grad, so I have to admit I'm a little biased here. And I do believe that Oregon State is the state of Oregon's university because of the impact that it has across our state. What's your perspective on actually the partnership? Because I think that collectively, as we opened this morning, the partnership between our universities, from Portland State to University of Oregon to Southern Oregon to our community college base, what's your perspective on how that work is happening, and are you happy with? Do you see opportunities for related to how we can be working better together?
Great question, right? I'm a huge proponent of the idea that we've got to think of our educational offerings in an integrated way. So it's not just, Oregon State, wonderful as it is, or it's just not U of O or Portland State. We've really got to craft the entire educational system in an integrated way. Our wonderful community colleges have their role to play. You might know that something like 40% of OSU students are actually community college transfers. And that's true of some of our other universities as well. And so making sure that those transfer pathways are really frictionless is really important. We have to have common course numbering, common course outcomes, and ensuring that students are successful all across the spectrum. Now, in terms of workforce development, we've got lots of work already going on. We have lots of collaborations with our own community colleges. I was just at Lynn Benton the other day, and of course, I'd want to connect up much more tightly to Portland Community College and so many others. We've got joint projects with our R1 universities. But thinking through the entire spectrum, all the way from community colleges through the R1s is going to be important. But let me say this, it's also important for us to recognize the specific roles that all these different universities play, right? So let me speak to my own university, which is a Research One university. What do we bring to the table, right? We bring four-year degrees to the table. Four-year degrees are really important in terms of high-paying jobs, right? Beyond that, we do cutting-edge research, and from this cutting-edge research come spin-offs. You might have heard of Impria, which is connected to the semiconductor industry. Does a lot of wonderful photoresist work with high-end lithography, critical to the advancement of the semiconductor industry. You'll have heard of there's agility robotics. Now, robotics is going to be a big part of the technology spectrum that plays all across the board, all across manufacturing. Came out of OSU. We've talked about green energy. You'll have heard of NuScale, which builds modular nuclear reactors. And so, I want to point out the specific role that R1s play in the knowledge spectrum. So it is absolutely important for us to be supporting community colleges, but to recognize the research role that R1 universities play.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Super important. And as we close up our already short time together, for Oregon to thrive economically, as we think about the purpose of the summit, as we look to the next decade ahead, in your short time here, like what would you say or ask of our elected officials to provide to Oregon State and to our other Oregon universities and to our college system? How do you set that up for kind of, based on where we're headed here?
Well, look, investments in higher ed are an investment in our future. And if you don't invest in higher ed, you're basically giving that future away, right? We haven't, in my view, invested sufficiently. Oregon is 45th or something like that in the list of states in terms of the investment in higher ed. We've got to step that up. It's a question of equity, right? I mean, if our net price per student is high, which it is in Oregon, what it means is that you're taking away the future for an entire set of students who are first gen, students who come from communities of color. So it's really an equity question. So I am asking the legislature to invest in the future of Oregon students. Now we're building out on the other, there's a whole bunch of research infrastructure that we're building out, particularly to support the semiconductor initiatives. We've got a lot of private and philanthropic money entering the picture. You'd have heard about the Jensen Laurie Huang collaborative innovation complex that we're building. We're asking the state to support that. We're asking for $75 million in state bonding to actually build that out and support our semiconductor industry. That's one kind of support. And to support students, student funding and help for students to make it across the entire educational spectrum.
Outstanding, outstanding. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining us at the Business Summit. Welcome to Oregon, and most importantly, welcome to Oregon State University. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you.